I've been a supporter of Help the Aged for a long time, impressed by the charity's work to tackle poverty, loneliness, and inequality for older people here in the UK. The older people Help the Aged supports, I always think, could so easily be my mum or my dad. But it was only recently that I realized Help the Aged doesn't just work in the UK. In fact, Help the Aged was set up as a UK-based international charity responding to the needs of older refugees more than 40 years ago. The organization works with partners throughout the world with some of the poorest older people. Pensioners here in the UK can have things pretty tough, with thousands suffering loneliness, low pensions, poverty, and poor access to health care. But in the poorest countries of the world, older people often live in complete and absolute poverty. Over 100 million older people survive on less than $1 a day. That's less than 50p, the price of a loaf of bread. In the UK, every older person at least gets a minimum pension. It's a safety net that makes sure they can eat, buy clothes, and have somewhere to live. But in many developing countries, millions of older people don't have that safety net. They don't receive any pension. They have no money at all, no way to earn an income, and many have no family support. They're left destitute. Without money, older people in developing countries often can't get health services or medicine, or even afford healthy, nutritious food. 3 out of 4 blind older people in developing countries could have had their sight loss prevented if they could have been treated.
नहीं लग रहा आगे जाके तो बिल्कुल ही नहीं दिखेगा ऐसा लग रहा अभी और ये सूरज गएगा अभी तो ठीक दिख रहा जो जैसे ही ये ख़त्म होएगा वैसे ही आँख मेरा उजल कम होगा मैं कहीं जो भी है फ्यूचर में मतलब जितनी चीज़ों की ज़रूरत पड़ती है वो सब करने कपड़ा है लगता है जाना कहीं आना जैसे लड़की है वो जब कहीं जाना पड़ जाता है शादी ब्याह में जाना पड़ जाता है.
In countries ravaged by AIDS, it is older people who often have to pick up the pieces. Too poor to properly feed and clothe themselves, these older people also become the primary carers for their grandchildren, whose own parents have died from the AIDS epidemic. Some 6 million AIDS orphans in sub-Saharan Africa are cared for by older people. As if daily life wasn't hard enough, when disaster or famine strikes in poor countries, it is often older people who are worst hit. Because older people can sometimes be frail or lack strength, or because they have only a low status in their communities, their calls for help can be overlooked. When famine strikes, older people simply can't manage the scrum for food when aid packages arrive. They're left with nothing. Today, 375 million people over 60 live in developing countries. By 2050, there will be 1,500 million, nearly 5 times as many. That's why action needs to be taken now. Help the Aged is there with aid and development where it can. But your help is needed to change the overall situation, and you can do that by helping us to lobby government. Help the Aged is calling for every older person in developing countries to be given a regular small cash sum, a minimum pension, just as there is in the UK. A minimum amount, a social pension, provided to every older person could literally mean the difference between life and death. That extra money would mean the poorest people at least had enough to eat for themselves and the family they support. They could afford basic shelter, clothing, perhaps to even start a small enterprise.
अच्छा होगा कुछ खाने को मिल जाएगा भाई रुक के नहीं खाएगा बनाकर कुछ लेकर उस एक खाया तो 2 फुलके खाने लग जाएंगे वो बात है रुक की रोटी तो खाई नहीं जाती जैसे भी उससे खा पी कर पिया से खा लिया उससे खा लिया रोज रोज तो दूसरे को मांगना भी शर्म लगती मामा के लड़के वो रिश्तेदार के रोज ही आने लगे मेरे को ऐसे
Social pensions do make a difference. In Chile, when a social pension was introduced, nearly half of the country's older people were moved out of poverty. The social pension in South Africa reduced the scale of poverty among older people by 95%. In Brazil, 5.5 million older people receive a social pension. As a result, a family with a pensioner in it is much less likely to be poor. And what's more, countries can provide social pensions for all older people without breaking the bank. The UK is one of the largest donors of international aid. We're calling for those aid packages provided to poor countries to include a social pension to be provided for the poorest older people in the world. In developing countries, when older people receive a basic minimum pension, it's not just the poor older people who benefit. their families, the people they support. Whole communities are lifted out of poverty. Having their own money gives older people a better status in their communities. It helps them to have their voices heard. Social pensions can make a real difference. We need your support to send a strong message to the government. Join our petition on the website or call to receive more information. Help us deliver the message that pensions, not poverty, is a basic human right.